Mama Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? Bizichutech v'shavu vanim ligvulon.
היורצייט של רחל אמנו צריך להזכיר לנו כל שאיפתו, כל השתדלותו, רק לבנות את כלל ישראל. ונגיע של עצמיות, לא שום נגיע של רק כוונתו לבנות את כלל ישראל על פי הקדושה. וזה צורך להיות השתדלות של כל בית ישראל, להמשיך הקדושה של כלל ישראל, איך לבנות בית נאמן בישראל, דווקא פתי הקדש, איך אין שלום בית על פתי הקדש. כל הגולסו צריך להיות על פי התורה, וזה כל השיר של רוחל, לבנות כלל ישראל על פי התורה הקדש. השם יצליח לכל האנשים שיזכו להמשיך הקדושה של כלל ישראל על פי תורה הקדושה. ובזכות זה השם נזכו כולנו לזמן של משיח צדקנו.
Mama Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children?
The yahrzeit of Rachel Imenu was always a very, to say choshev would be to minimize the importance of the yahrzeit of Rachel Imenu. She has one of the most unique places in the hearts of all womankind, I think of every Jewish woman. And secondly, the fact that it's being dedicated to my aunt, who in my eyes was also a very special lady. A woman who also did so much for so many people in so many ways that I feel blessed. And I'd like to share with you some of the inspiration that she was for us, as her personal inspiration that she was for us, her family. She, like her like her father, held open house. Her door was always open. And she was so unsparing with her love and caring for as many people as she came in contact with. And she came in contact with loads of people. She became very ill after the birth of her first child. It was a very unfortunate experience in the sense that there was no doctor to have done what should have been done, and therefore she got blood poisoning as a result of the birth and became paralyzed from the waist down. It was a tragedy. She was, I don't even think 20 years old. But from her we learned what meant the power of tefillah. And I maybe would like to share with you a story that occurred and really, I'd say, was machazek, strengthened the concept of what tefillah can do. They were walking, my uncle was pushing her in a wheelchair. And it was very hard for her. She was such a person full of life. And for such a person to be denied, to be able to move around, and so young and so pretty and so sweet, and to be pushed. Anyway, unfortunately, she overheard two women behind her saying, "Look at that handsome young man with, I'd like to say, stuck with a crippled wife. So young. Isn't it tragic?" It was that night that she called for Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, the Mashgiach in the Mir. Now everyone felt sorry for my aunt in the Mir. It was like one large family. Since there were so few Americans, they were very, very makar of us. My uncle was the first family, the first couple to ever come to the Mir to learn. My father the second, and she probably the third. That was it. Well, when Reb Chatzkel came, she said to him, Reb Chatzkel, I want to give my husband a get. Reb Chatzkel said, a get? And do you think he wants one? She smiled despite the fact that her eyes were full of tears. He said, but he deserves it. Why should he be stuck to a crippled wife? He's young, and I can't have more children. What kind of a life is it for him? And Reb Chatzkel said, shame on you! He scolded her. He said, you're giving up so fast? He says, Tzedar Rabbeinu Shalom in Himmel, you don't believe it? She said, of course I do, but look at me. He said, so? I look at you, and I still feel that you have so much to live for, and so much to bet for, to pray for. She says, you think I don't bet? You think I don't pray? He says, ad ma'ot, till tears. You don't bet enough. She says, how much more? I don't want to make the atmosphere so depressing in the house. So I can't walk around crying. He said, no, but the heart can cry even when you smile. She said, if I bet so much and my heart cries, will you also bet for me? He said, but if I bet, I'm going to bet for more. What are you going to bet for? Rucham called her Rucham. What are you going to bet for? She said, to get well. He said, and I'm going to bet that you should get well and you should dance at your children's weddings. She said, my children? Halavai, I should be zeicha to bring my Yisrael Meir to the chuppah. I don't ask for more, he said, but I do, and so should you. When you ask not minimum, you ask maximum. You ask, the Rabbeinu Shalom can give everything. Why should you deny yourself more nachas? Why ask for so little? She cried. She said, all right, it's a deal. And she didn't use those words, but for the sake of saying, she said, I was, all right, I'll try. I want you to know that with the years, she continued to daven and she started to walk. And she started to walk, and thank Hashem, she was blessed when Yisrael Meir was 8 to have another child, and a little while later, a third child. And she danced at all their weddings.
Mama Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children?
I must tell you the story, what will give chizuk for all of us. That's the story when Ruchame was in Nimir. Her father sent her husband to learn, like he sent many of big Rabbanim and Rosh Hashivas that came out of there to learn Torah. Ruchame was with her husband, and she gets a letter, Ruchama, you have to come home. Ruchama doesn't ask questions. She packs your baggage, and she's ready to go. Papa said to come home, and she's going home. Ruchama comes out of the boat, exciting to see everybody. She runs over to her ma, and they hug each other. She looks around. Something is different. They don't look so happy. And she goes over to Esther. She felt something. Who is Frida? She said, she's far away. She couldn't come. Could we talk to her on the telephone? She says she doesn't hear. And then she couldn't keep it anymore. Then Esther said, Frida is not anymore with us. Now she knows that she could give out to her father what hurt her. And she said, Pa, why Hashem did it to us? Why He took away a mother of 7 little children. What's gonna be? And why nobody told me about it? Papi said, we didn't came here to ask questions. We are soldiers from all for the boss. Enough ours to do the orders what he gave us. Papi said, Ruchama, we have to be so happy. 31 years we was a schus to be with Frida. We had such a schus to have such a daughter. You have such a schus to have such a sister. She really was special, and we was very proud to have her. And now we have to go further. We have to do what Hashem wants from us. And that was Papa. That's Ruchama said. That's what he was. We came on this world to do what he told us to do and to go on further, even it's not easy, and to always thank him for what he gave us.
Mama Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children?
At around age 19, I think it was, I received a birthday gift from a friend. And it was the book, All for the Boss, by Rebbetzin Ruchama Shein. Little did I know then what an incredible impact that book was to have on my life. I decided I can't just take this book and put it on the bookcase. I have to share it. And I decided to give it to my father, Alav Shalom, who was not yet as committed as I was in Yiddishkeit. I gave the book to my father, and he couldn't put it down. I remember asking him after he finished the book, so Daddy, what'd you think? And there were tears falling from his eyes. My father wasn't someone who would cry so easily. And he said, I guess we have to do it all for the boss. After my dear father's patira, even a year and more, the ache was unbearable. And I needed to place it somewhere, and I needed to do something. And one day it just clicked. I'm going to write a letter to Rebbetzin Shein. And I sat down, and I wrote a 13-page letter to my dear Rebbetzin. I didn't even need to mail the letter. That's the truth. It did what it had to do. But of course I said, you know, I took all this time. I may as well let me mail it. And I figured, all right, I'm sure I am not the only one that writes letters to Rebbetzin Shein. I am sure if I even get an answer, it won't be for at least a couple of months. A week later, my letter arrived in the mail. Dear Julie, your letter is a masterpiece in describing your emotions regarding the close relationship you had with your father Zatzal and his fight with cancer and his subsequent death. I could feel your heartache when he was ill, your intense sorrow when he passed away, and you're trying to cope with the difficult situation. If in some measure I was of help to you through my books, it is a source of comfort to me. It is also uplifting to know that your dad, Zatzal, gained from my book, All for the Boss. She ended by saying, it certainly makes things easier for you that your mother found fulfillment after the loss of her husband. If she comes to Jerusalem, it would be nice to meet her. Yesterday was Tisha B'Av, a day of mourning and tears. May Hashem answer our prayers, and may Tisha B'Av become a day of rejoicing instead of a day of sorrow. May we share good tidings, and may peace come to our land. In friendship, Ruchama Shein.
As you all know, tonight is dedicated to the holy neshama of Mutter Rachel. Now let me tell it to you how the first Hachnosas Orchem started in America. My grandparents arrived to America in 1888 with my father, who was 8 years old, and his little sister, Malka. They came to the golden land that they'll make parnasa and they'll be able to keep Torah, as my grandfather was a Rebbe in Europe. But when he came, he found out no one wanted a Rebbe. They did not need a Rebbe. Everybody went to work, and it was a very difficult time. So he started to find a job. Wherever he did, he'd come there Monday, and he'd stay until Friday. Friday, he would go away. Sunday, you were not allowed to work. He would come back on Monday. When he'd walk in, they would say, "Where were you on Saturday?" He said, "Saturday? I don't work on Saturday. Get out. We need someone who works on Saturday." He went from job to job, and he was an excellent worker. Each time that he said, "I don't work on Shabbos," they threw him out. Once he got a job, and they liked him so much, they said, "All right, you don't have to work on Shabbos, and we'll keep you." And then it came Chol Hamoed, and of course, he would not work on Chol Hamoed. He comes back after the week. They said, "Where were you?" He said, "I don't work on Chol Hamoed." They said, "Now you're crazy, get out." And so he never found a job, and they were very, very poor. After 5 years of a lot of struggle and being really Mesiras Nefesh for Shabbos and Chol Hamoed and Torah, my grandfather said to my grandmother, "We have to go back to Europe." It meant to go back to poverty, to poorness. But there we'll keep Torah, here we can't. So they bought tickets for a boat, on a boat, but there was a problem. My father was then just past 13, and he needed a full ticket. A full ticket on the boat, which took about 6-7 weeks, was $16, and they did not have money for him. So they said, "Yankov Yosef, you'll remain here, you'll stay by some cousins, and as soon as we get money, we'll bring you." So they went to the cousins, and my father was then working in a fur shop, and he was an apprentice, and he was earning $1.25 a week. He was a very brilliant young little boy, and he did the work. So the cousin said, "They'll take $1," and with the 25 cents, he decided he'll have what he needs for his expenses and save up to bring back his parents and his sister. So a few weeks passed, and one day when he came from work, his cousin said to him, $1 is not enough, we want $1.25. That was all he had, and he felt betrayed, like they took away everything he had. So he took all his clothes, and he moved out on Erev Shabbos, and it was soon going to be Shabbos. So he went to a bakery, and he bought 3 little rolls he should have for Kiddush. And he went to a park. It was called Hester Park. And he sat down there, and he put his clothes in a bush, hid it, and then he put the bulkalach, the little chalis, in the bush, and then he decided he'll go to shul. He went to the shul. He was a skinny little boy, and he came, and he was davening there. Not one person came over and said to him, "Little boy, where are you eating tonight? Who are you?" No one came over to him. He went from shul, and he came back to the park, and he made Kiddush over the 2 bulkalach, the little rolls, and people passed. No one stopped to say, "Little boy, who are you?" And he sat alone. His parents had gone away. His cousins wanted all his money, and he cried. He sat alone a whole night on the park. When he got up in the morning, instead of being angry, "Look what you did to me, Hashem," he stood up and looked up at heaven, and he said, "Hashem, one day I'll get married, and I'll tell you something. I'll never, never, never have a house that will not have people who have no place to be. My house will be open to everybody." And so he grew up, and he met my mother. My mother was Adel, and before he said, "I'll marry you," he said, "There's one very big condition. You have to take the condition that we will have in our house, Achnos Sochem. Every poor, lonely person who has no place to be will be by us. My mother said, I'm very happy with it. And she and my father, both together, I'm the youngest, I watched the love, the way they kept the Orchim. In fact, there was a story I remember that a Noach came once, Erev Shabbos, and said to my mother, I want to eat by you. How much do you want? I have money, but there's no place to eat, kosher. So my mother said, don't worry about the money. You'll see about it afterwards. You come and eat. After he stayed Shabbos, he said, it was wonderful. How much do you want? She said, I would take money for Achnosus Orchem. What do you think? We never take money. Said you would take. I wanted you to eat. That was her love for Achnosus Orchem. And then that was how the first Achnosus Orchem started. I'll tell you a very interesting story, how it affected our lives as children. My oldest sister, Mrs. Stern, she was 10 years old, and one day my mother said to her, as she never went anyplace, she was a good child, she helped everybody in the house. I was the baby, she took care of me. So my mother said, you know, my uncle, my mother's brother, was leaving for Europe. She said, Esther, I'll take you to the boat, and you'll see a big boat, and how uncle goes away. He was going to Palestine. My sister was so happy. She got up in the morning, she got dressed, and the whole day she kept saying to my mother, Mama, when are we going? When are we going to the boat? My mother said, soon, soon, soon. And she was all dressed up. My mother got dressed up. As they were going out of the house, they were just leaving, my father walked in with some orchim, and he said to Adel, Adel, get busy, we have orchim. So my mother took off her coat and started to give them food. And my sister Esther kept pulling, Mama, when are we going? When are we going? I want to go to the boat. My mother said, shh, soon, soon. By the time she finished giving the orchim the food and everything, the boat had sailed. And she said, Esther, it's too late. And Esther started to cry very much. And my father came over to her and said, Esther, what are you crying? Why are you crying? She said, I was going to go with Mommy to a boat, and I waited the whole day, and I couldn't go. He said, let me tell you something, Esther, and remember it. She told me afterwards, she did not understand what he said because he used a term. He said, you should know. Someday you'll see boats, but you know that we cornered the market. We are the first Hachnosus Orchem, and Hashem will give us dividends for every generation. You'll see will be repaid all the generations. She did not understand what he meant, cornered the market, but she told me, I felt like a calmness, something that that Papa said that made me feel so wonderful. And so that was the Achnosach. Now I'll tell you another story that happened to me. Rabbi Bear, the great Rabbi Bear from Kamenetz, was our house on Urach. I was then about 12 years old, and I used to run from school just to come to look at him. He had beautiful blue eyes. He was the most beautiful man, and I couldn't wait to see him. One day there was a very big rain, and Rabbi Bear had to go out, so they said, Ruchama, find his galoshes, his rubbers. So I crept under all the closets. Finally, I found it, and I said, Rebbe, here's your galoshes. So he stood, and he said, you should get your right civic. By me, I did not know what civic meant. If he'd say I should get 100% on my test, I'd be happier. He said, civic, okay. Went away. He stayed in our house 2 years. When he was leaving, hundreds and hundreds of people came to say goodbye to him. So my father said, Ruchama, quick, we'll go to Rabbi Bear, he'll give you a bracha. So we went in, he was in a room in the back, and my father came in with me and said, Rebbe, Ruchama. Oh, so he looked down, and I saw him thinking and thinking. I said, now I'll get a bracha. You should get the right civic. The same bracha again. I did not understand it. Years later, let me tell you what that bracha was. I married my husband. He was a wonderful young man, and he said to me when we got married, Ruchama, that the best month of my life is Elul. I was born 16 days in Elul, and our wedding was going to be 12 days in Elul. The same week, he said, how happy I am with it. Then we went to the Mir, to Poland. In the Mir, he got sick, and a doctor came, but the doctor did not understand what was wrong. He says he hears a funny sound in his heart, but he doesn't know what it is. We came back to America, and then my husband did not feel well, so we went to a very big cardiologist, a heart doctor, and the doctor said, I must take tests. When he took tests, he said, I cannot believe this, it cannot happen. He has a congenital condition, which he was born with, that shows he has a hole in his heart, and in this condition, they do not live more than their infancy, when they're a baby. And he was already then about 65. He said, it never happened that a man could live with this condition. So they wrote it up in the International Medical Journal, and I have a copy, that said he was the only living man in the world to have this condition. When did he die? He was born 16 days in Elul. We married 12 days in Elul. He died 15 days in Elul, all in 1 week. But the schus of the Orchem made that I should live with him almost 60 years of a wonderful marriage from the bracha of Rabbi Ber. He gave us the bracha. I should get the right civic. The right civic doesn't mean at birth or at infancy, and he lived till 79 years old. And that was the schus that my father said to my sister, Mrs. Stern, all the generations will get the dividends for Aruch Nosochem. And I got that I had my husband live so long. And I feel that it's very important this night to know everybody what it means, a mitzvah Nosochem. Thank you very much. And we should be already a schus for Mutter Rachel, that she should come like she prayed for us, but she did with her sister Leah. She should again pray that Mashiach should come, and there should be a Geula Shlema, and we should have Taka, El Yisrael should be ours, and we should find that we should be worthy to live in this land in peace and in happiness. Amen.
Mama Rachel, cry for us again. Won't you shed a tear for your dear children? Bizichutech v'shavu vanim.